imagine? It would be so good. 6:31.
Good evening. I'd like to call to order the Town Council Finance and Human Resources Committee meeting. It is September 12th. Council Member Katie LaFarge-Shu. Council Member Scott Harrington is. Council Member John Raptor. Is there any corrections needed for the acceptance of minutes? I believe we've covered this before. Katie, you can just show them, even though you were absent long, so.
Okay.
There's no needed corrections with the minutes as provided. Before we go on to the topic, I just wanted to ask you guys, how did we manage to go 2 full weeks without one item on the agenda from your desk?
I thought it was a mistake also.
Well, I don't think I've ever seen this.
We canceled the day before. We didn't quite get there. So.
Well, we canceled one because I think a couple of us were sick or something.
It's been a couple years though.
Yeah. Okay.
Just a fluke, I guess.
Was that a couple of years?
It's giving up for next time. Don't worry.
Okay. All right, well, we're going to move on to topic game and turn it over to Council Member Scott Harrington.
No, you're not the only. Keep thinking Conor McGregor. It's a compliment. What's Shane, right? Conor Kimball. Shane was before. Shane was prior, yes, sir. So Conor's here for Enterprise Fleet. He's going to go over our fleet, what Enterprise might be able to do to help us with possibly saving money or ideas about our fleet. As you know, we do have a significant fleet here in Leon. I think our first year here we spent almost 6 figures in to vehicles, and which was a big chunk right off the bat. So he's going to pitch how Enterprise does things. I'm somewhat familiar with the program because we do it up where I work. We started it for savings for us. So he would like to come and give a quick presentation and answer questions, and we'll go from there.
Well, Kyle, if you have any handouts, you can do it now, and feel free to give to Jay Lee, our financial officer, and Dave Wisberger, who is also a council member.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks.
You should be. I get that. Scott, I'm going back to you if I have an extra. So you won't be checked quite a bit. Engineer as well.
If you don't have it,
You should do it. Well, I appreciate you all letting me jump into your meeting this evening. We're excited to walk through the program. Some bit of background. My name is Conor Kimball. I've been with Enterprise for 7 years, working in our fleet management division. I have a lot of experience with local municipalities and government entities in regards to operation of our program and implementation process as well. Before diving in, I will provide a synopsis. This is data provided from when we met with Shane 2 years ago. Again, the goal would be to provide an updated analysis of where you're at today, give you a really good look at where the actual savings can come in, what the program would look like, and how the implementation process can take place. But before doing so, did anyone have any initial questions they'd like to start with before I get into it? No? Okay. The only thing I'd like to start with is a little bit of a reference of who we're working with locally. So we work with Delaware County, City and County of Oneida, Otsego County, Schuyler County. I personally work with the Village of Watkins Glen, Town of Webster, Village of Canton, SUNY Portland, Clarkson University, just to name a few other government entities locally that you might know. The goal is to reduce overall costs of owning and operating fleet vehicles, doing so through the use of an open and equity lease. I'll go through in a little bit more detail as to what the differences prior to introduced probably seen from that lease or dealership lease. How our funding mechanisms allow municipalities to be flexible, reduce their overall costs, and overall drive down the operational spend. From the data we provided 2 years ago, we took a look at 33 of the city vehicles. These are light and medium duty vehicles. It looks like we had a couple of the police vehicles included as well. So of those 33, about 24% of the fleet was 10 years or older. We had a current holding period or cycling period of about 11 years. What kind of a key contributor is of driving the cost is having older vehicles. You're looking at more preventive and non-preventive maintenance. Obviously, operating those vehicles over time, they're less safe, and will drive up those expenses. So our goal, in totality, is really to create a savings and implementation plan of reducing the overall cost from an overall budget standpoint, utilizing this lease structure to be flexible in implementing as we know their operating vehicles and there's costs associated is a moving target. So the program itself allows that to consistently and sustainably drive down those costs. The analysis we put together, again, about 2 years ago, offered a very conservative savings of about $386,000 over 10 years. Again, the overall goal would be to update fleet, prepare an updated financial analysis to show exactly how we can implement that process. To do so by utilizing the automatic release, we'll try to reduce your age or your holding period from 11 years to about 4. Again, this will be based off of each vehicle, the aftermarket, how the vehicle is being utilized, mileage patterns, and all that data that goes into it. As a reference, Enterprise is the largest buyer and seller of vehicles in North America. We utilize our infrastructure, our economies of scale, and pass that through to our partners. The reason it works so well is because we piggyback off more buying power, so any government incentives that we traditionally buy from the bid system, we pass that right through. We utilize our network from a resale standpoint, where we added about 110% of our Blackbook CVI, which is the wholesale market around there, which equity is retained to the state. So all of that equity that we have from the sale of the vehicles and operating those vehicles through an automatic release will then go back to the city and utilize those funds however you see fit. You can roll those sales, the sale of those vehicles into replacement leases, take it as a check, and invoice reduction, however, again, it makes sense for the city at that time. As an open and equity release, or a little more information on how that works, we're flexible with our structure based again on the utilization of those vehicles. We'll set up a structure in which we appreciate vehicles to really right set up, equitable, if you will, from the structure of that piece. When it's time to review, we look at every vehicle every year. You have myself, you have a client strategy manager, you have an account fleet coordinator that all runs the analysis, reports to you, ultimately to show how we can reduce your overall cost and most physical responsible decision made. It's ultimately your call, but we'll structure a plan that you can follow, reducing your maintenance costs, taking advantage of the equity, and only paying for the useful life of the vehicle rather than using cash flow upfront to purchase everything. As a basis standpoint, is there any questions before moving on to some of the more details and eventually the analysis itself?
So, Chuck, do you know if Delaware County has saved money on parts warehouse? I know that we put a parts warehouse down in Central Garage. Does the municipality save that warehouse?
Absolutely. So there's a kind of a range from our maintenance program. I'm going to go into more detail, but majority of our municipal partners have some sort of in-house facility. So we have maintenance programs in which we can fix and budget maintenance if you're outsourcing. We have maintenance management programs where if you're handling that in-house, you would be encouraged. If you're happy with what you're seeing from your facility, by all means, we have the track and capabilities to reduce the overall cost and damage that come with that. So by operating newer, more efficient vehicles, again, from fuel degradation from every model year, we're making improvements going to happen, right, from every single model year. So holding a vehicle for 4 to 5 years out of 11, you're going to be looking at safety features that we would not have from older vehicles. You're going to have significantly less operational spend from a fuel and a maintenance standpoint, but all of that can be handled in-house with your teams. You'll have a data tracking that goes into that. So you'll have a very simple system to follow. All the ROs, POs, everything you've done in-house can be tracked very easily on the website, and it gives you that data real time. So the overall cost did significantly increase because we only looked at really vehicles.
For municipalities that do not have in-house maintenance, how do you maintain their vehicles?
It's a great question. So for anyone that's outsourcing their maintenance at the moment, we do a full maintenance program for them. Town of Webster is a great example of that, where they do outsourcing for some of their departments, other departments handle in-house. So a full maintenance program, we fix and we budget the entire maintenance cost of the life cycle of that vehicle.
And who does the maintenance?
any of our preferred partners locally. So with our infrastructure through Rent-A-Car, as well as our fleet management partners, we have a very, very strong network of preferred vendors. We're on our auto-integrate system. You have preferred work to be done if it's an enterprise car, especially if it's a city vehicle. It kind of gets frontlined. It reduces your downtime so you're not waiting on that maintenance to be done. You don't have to call us. We set limits so we can just pass that through. When you have full maintenance, it's included in the lease, so you're not getting a bill later, you're not putting anything in the car. It's completely covered, both preventative and non-preventative. Anything other than like an actual liability claim is 100% covered in that program.
So when you say outside sources, are you talking about Country Club Chevy?
Exactly. We're well enough for any local shops that you have good trust in or that you prefer. They're not in our system, you can always add them. The goal is to make sure that you know that you have a trusted vendor and someone that will perform that quality work at the quickest possible pace for you.
I think, Jim, we use a lot of our local vendors, right?
The only time we ever sublet is if for some reason there is a job that our mechanics are not trained to do. That could be like on fire trucks. Sometimes the buses have to go up to Albany. But most generally, unless there is an accident for body repair, things like that. It's very rare that there's engine work that has to go to a different source, outside of buses.
Warranty work.
Warranty work will go to whoever's covering the warranty.
While we're on top of the warranties as well, all manufacturer warranties are automatically passed through when it's through the lease structure. How it works is we hold title, we register the vehicles to the city per department. So it makes the process of data capture, the sale of the vehicles much smoother. Again, we retain all the rights to the equity, but we hold the title of the vehicle, so when we sell the vehicle, there's not that transition process. We handle all the license, the title, the administration. We really remove a lot of the administrative work off of your plate. From a sales standpoint, you don't have to put vehicles out to bid. You don't have to be chasing bids down from the front end trying to acquire vehicles. We really do try to reduce all of that work that you all have, obviously, time to be spent on other things that are important to the city from all of your standpoint. So really, we want to remove you from the acquisition, the used car sale market, and let us handle that for you. Bring you the data, and then you can ultimately make the best decision for the city.
I have a couple questions.
Yes.
I just don't know if I should wait until the end, because I'm sure I'll have more. So it sounds like, my first two questions are this. It sounds like you guys sort of take over a lot of the, administration. So maybe actually my question is for Greg, and I don't know if you can answer it right now, but is there any increased administration on our end based on this contract? Like if we were to do a contract with them, is there something that we would have to do that?
Increased effort on our part? I don't think so. I mean, obviously, administering a contract with enterprise, but.
In terms of the, maintaining the contract and?
I think so, if we wouldn't be outsourcing any more, our maintenance would be exactly the same as it is now, so that wouldn't really change. I think, there's going to be coordination, any new vehicle that's purchased or sold. I mean, there's going to be that added administrative back and forth. I can't really say that it's more or less, I don't know, Jimmy.
There's a new accounting regulation that we have to abide by and record all of our leases and report it on our financial statements.
Okay, so that would be different. Okay. I have like a really just kind of newbie transparency question. It's like, it sounds like you guys are, in the process of saving municipalities a lot of money. So how does enterprise profit from this structure?
It's a great question. So we have two areas in which we have our profit. It's done through a management fee. It's 0.1% of the capitalized cost of the vehicle. So that is one portion for having the actual management team. And then because we're our own bank, we have interest as well. Those are the two portions in which we make our profit. The rest is very, very straightforward. All of our agreements, they're all kind of general agreements, if you will. We don't have any contract that you have to hold business with us for an extended period of time.
Okay.
We own your business on per vehicle. We're very confident in our program to the fact that if you don't see value, one, we want to make sure that we're correcting that, but two, you're not stuck in a position where if 3 years down the line, what I'm telling you is not coming to fruition, you're not stuck in anything that you don't want to be a part of. Again, we're confident in the program, so it's a per vehicle basis in which we continue to earn your business.
Okay, follow-up questions.
Sure.
One is, what is the transition like? How would we phase this in? Or is it like, you guys just replace all our vehicles and we sell all of our old ones?
It's a great question. So I will create a financial analysis, and again, this was an older one, so my main goal is to get an updated food list, and let's rework another analysis. It's actually actionable. A lot has changed in the industry. There's order periods right now from Ford, Chevy, Stellantis, in which the order banks are open for a month, sometimes a week. So I really, having our expertise and my ability to navigate that, I meet with our manufacturer representatives weekly. So I have insight on what vehicles can be ordered, what the lead times are, the best incentives for the type of vehicle. If maybe there's a vehicle that I could, run analysis on best for a job, that might not otherwise be the case. So that's a big piece there. The second piece is I always start tiering vehicles in. I'll always look at your oldest vehicles first, highest mileage. They're the ones that are going to be costing me the most from an operational standpoint. Typically, we tier in. I have municipalities that have done half their fleet. Recently, the county of Wyoming, our construction plan was kind of 50% up front, and then tier a couple more after. We have municipalities that have chosen to, leg it in over maybe like a 5-year implementation plan. Ultimately, I will write an analysis that will save you the most money. We also know that things will change over time, the markets change, so we'll make adjustments where maybe, 2 years, we say, okay, that makes sense to replace 5 more of these vehicles based on what the resale market is showing. We know we can sell this vehicle for more, and we'll pursue that and present it to you. But typically with all our municipal partners, it's a tiered process. So we're not just diving and replacing everything all at once.
Gotcha. And on the back end of that, if you were to terminate our agreement, how do municipalities typically phase out of enterprise? Because you would own all your vehicles.
Right, and that's always a question that I deal with in any board meeting. So it's, I have not been in that situation luckily, but we have been in those situations obviously in years past. What's the best way to take advantage of that would be us to sell the vehicle. That's one of the key components of how we're able to drive down the cost of ownership for our partners.
Okay.
So all
we
the
would buy
other,
the vehicles from you at that point.
we would sell it and give you all the equity of the vehicle.
Oh, gotcha.
We'll do all the work for you.
Okay.
As far as the replacement, we can help kind of facilitate replacements. If you wanted to buy the vehicles out, that's an option too. You can also extend the lease, keep those payments remaining. You can still operate as you were with leased vehicles. So maybe you decide not to replace that vehicle, or there's a portion of the fleet you don't think it's working out. You can extend, pay that vehicle through until it's fully depreciated. You can buy the vehicle out and sell it for you. Again, the flexibility is there. Our goal is to make it as easy as possible and really make sure that we're hitting what your needs are going to be.
Okay. Thank you.
Of course. What I want to flip to before we call through here is actually the analysis. I think this will help bring a little bit of light to kind of how we're implementing the program. If you can flip to the city fleet profile page, this gives you a look at what the initial instruction was and how we're looking to implement that program first. So the fleet profile, it walks through the vehicle types, number of vehicles of each type, their average age of each vehicle, and then the average mileage of each vehicle type, giving us kind of a breakdown or a standard, if you will, across those 33 vehicles. Average age is just under 9 years. Average mileage is right around 6,400. And then to the right is a fleet replacement schedule, and that's kind of how we tiered in that program. The top right is replacement criteria. So for the 2021 recommended replacement or initial replacement, any vehicles 10 years older or down there over 100,000. Within that criteria, we have 9 vehicles. So we recommend replacing those first. Again, those would be the highest cost vehicles to keep in operation. And from a safety standpoint, we absolutely want to pursue those first. We then tiered it into 8 vehicles the following, 5 the year after that, 3, 6, and then there's 2 vehicles at that time. We recommend at least taking a look at, do we need these vehicles in fleet because they were underutilized from a mileage standpoint. So we'll always bring that up as well. Is there ways where we can maybe run a little bit leaner because we have a more efficient fleet? Ultimately, the goal is to reduce your costs. So that's a conversation, it's being the operation of the city. we'll have those conversations, like maybe no, we have to have that for certain one-off situations, but we're willing to entertain thoughts on how we can reduce your costs. Big key takeaways there was we have 8 vehicles over 10 years old, 3 vehicles 20 plus, so again, that comes from a safety standpoint and a lot of different specs that'll come in from that, whether it's backup cameras, seatbelt, warning signs, there's lane departure, and every single year they're adding more and more specs to increase safety of these vehicles, as well as fuel degradation. If you flip to the next page, this is the analysis itself, and gives you kind of a numerical look at how that implementation would work. So based on the data we had collected, we had those 33 vehicles, like I stated, current cycle period is about 11 years. Current maintenance data was 124.67, that's per vehicle per month. So it was right around 22 cents a mile, which is pretty standard. What we see is actually a little bit lower than what I've seen in some other municipalities. Really, that was going to be driven from those older vehicles. What we proposed was having 31 vehicles in fleet, so we're taking a look at those underutilized vehicles, having a cycle of under 4 years, so 3.71 years, ranging obviously based on the different types of vehicles and the aftermarket associated, and mileage patterns. We proposed a maintenance schedule of $48.89, that's per vehicle per month. And at that time, I know we wish we could all see that number again, but the fuel price was $2.50. Obviously, it's a little more expensive than that, right? So the orange and yellow line at the top, that gives you, that's kind of a generalized look. I know this changes from year to year, but this gives you like an average of what your year in, year out fleet cost would be, both acquisition as well as operational costs. So you have 33 vehicles, your average annual acquisitions came out to 3 per year. You own all 33. The average cost of those 3 vehicles annually was right around $115,000. The equity owned from those vehicles, we had around $3,000, and I'll walk into kind of what that means from that sale of those vehicles. Maintenance cost based off of the 22 cents a mile was $49,368. Fuel cost was $52,800. Again, that's just based off of the general mileage patterns. Miles per gallon of 10, and the fuel cost of $2.50. This gives you an all-in fleet budget of right around $214,000. The next line shows the implementation of those first 9 vehicles. So you'll see 31 vehicles in fleet size. You replace 9 vehicles, remove the underutilized vehicles, so now you have 22 owned, 9 leased. That lease cost for 9 vehicles was $76,379. Sale from the equity of the $3,000 was selling the underutilized vehicles. The $19,000 was a very conservative look at selling the remaining 9 vehicles. We also recommended putting some of these vehicles on 12-month leases based on what the vehicle mileage pattern was and the type of vehicle. This is something I would have to reassess. But based on the analysis provided, you have equity from the first round of those leased vehicles as well. So totaling up your equity, both $19,000 and $23,000 from leased vehicles and your own vehicles being sold, which comes back to the city. You'll see a significant reduction in maintenance costs. Again, we were getting rid of those oldest vehicles, so really now you're only looking at preventative maintenance. Oil changes, oil filters, really all of that is simple maintenance that can be obviously done in-house, will be significantly less expensive. You'll see fuel costs go down just again from the lack of fuel degradation from the older vehicles. Miles per gallon will improve. So you'll see a fleet budget now of about $121,000. So immediate year one net cash savings would be $93,000. This goes all the way through year 2025, which would be the last year of implementation. That would be getting the last replacement vehicles in. Now all vehicles are leased. You'll see the $57,000 from those remaining, I think it was 3 vehicles, yes, being sold there. You have the equity from the leased vehicles as well, which you'll see streamlined down the entire analysis. So you'll be constantly getting equity from the sale of the leased vehicles as well. You'll see kind of a budgeted and fixed number from a maintenance standpoint. Holding these vehicles for only 3 to 5 years, you're only going to be running it against those preventative maintenance work. So when it's taking that time out of the shop from employees, they can focus on larger equipment and reduce the cost that goes into these vehicles. Fuel budget will stay pretty standardized as well. Again, operating these vehicles, newer vehicles will have much higher miles per gallon. Fleet budget is around $100,000. All in 10-year savings, 5 years of implementation, 5 years fully on the program, you'd be looking at $386,000. The big component that I'd like to focus even more on is the average sustainable savings is 27,000. So that's an average savings from an annual basis. I think that's really important to look at too. A big lump sum savings is great, but how is it going to affect you year in and year out? I think it's more important, from an initial standpoint to look at, okay, what is the real cost? How is this going to benefit the city every single year? And that's one of the higher average sustainable savings I've seen, just because of the equity and the structure of those leases we have for vehicles to operate.
What happens in 2028? Why is it a negative 6501 for net cash? What am I looking at here? Why did it change?
Your fleet budget is going to, so that's higher, it's $6,500 higher than the original fleet budget. So you'll see certain years that are net cash savings. Big year, obviously, like I said, 2025, that's $109,000. Year one, 93. There was a year, that specific year, where the net cash savings was a little bit more expensive to operate that year based on those replacements. So that's how that tiers out. That's where we come from an average sustainable savings. But that specific year was a little bit more expensive due to those lease costs. A lot of the time that would be because of maybe it's a larger aftermarket vehicle, like we talked about a bucket truck or anything like that. And that's something I'll tier in and I'll take a deeper look at on where you're at today. What makes more sense from a sustainable standpoint. One item too is, again, the flexibility piece. We're going to hold to this because it's going to save the most money, but if there's something changes in the market, knowing your team internally, your departments, maybe it makes sense to look at different vehicles first. So that's something where it's a very interactive process, and we make sure that, one, we're hitting your budget, your budget structure on calendar year, and we're already looking, if we were to, hypothetically say we move forward with this, let's look at 5 vehicles. The truth of the matter, we're looking in 2023 right now. I've already done all my fleet planning with my clients, looking a year ahead. It's just the world we're living in, and it's where things are at. Lead times used to be 12 to 14 weeks. We order a vehicle, incentives are ready, we go to 9 months of the year. It's a beautiful thing. Now we're looking at about a month. They don't even have pricing out, we estimated. So there's a lot of infrastructure that we have that puts you in a position where you're not waiting or you're throwing a vehicle out for a bid and no one's responding, which we're seeing a lot with our municipal clients. We can get vehicles when others can't, and we can get the best possible pricing. So what I do forecasting these replacements, okay, whether it's an F-250, whether it's a 550 chassis with bucket, whether it's a simple half-ton truck, maybe some SUVs. When we talk about electrification, I did a lot of work with Clarkson University in their electrification process, same thing with SUNY Portland. But everyone's heading that direction too. I have a lot of insight from an implementation and infrastructure standpoint, so I work with our municipal partners on what makes sense, what can we handle now before you're jumping in too deep, and we all have to go in that direction. It's a matter of how to smartly implement that. So that's all items that I'll look into, and then we'll make sure that we're doing it as responsibly as we can as that transition moves forward.
So Connor, the savings that you would realize, you said you're still taking advantage of the city's ability to procure off government contracts and such. So essentially, we could theoretically get that same vehicle, whether we're purchasing or you are, but your added value is just being on top of things. And am I understanding that correct?
Yeah, so from the reason our town works so well with government entities, and really is the largest fleet management company in North America, the reason we've grown so much is because of our expansive growth in the government sector. You buy extremely well. Government entities buy better than anyone else can. We are the best seller of vehicles in North America. We get averaging 110% above Black Book CBI. 85, I would say closer now, given where the market is, and because of what we're seeing, about 95%. We're selling vehicles. We have people waiting for our vehicles. Because as an enterprise brand, we know they're being maintained. We can get a higher return. We have private dealerships. We have referral dealerships that are waiting our vehicles. When we have to go to an auction, we have boots on the ground watching these vehicles go through auction. So it's a lot of time, it's a lot of infrastructure again, and that sometimes our government partners don't necessarily have the time for it. You don't have time to have, your employees sitting in auction and just, like me, you have a million other things going on. Government entities are constantly asked to do more with less. That's our ability to do that. So it's a combination of what you naturally have as a government entity and what we can bring from a value standpoint of operation and the flexibility of the program as well.
So you would say you would expect to get better resale value than what we use now with either auction or
Absolutely.
homes or plots?
Absolutely.
What's the difference there, I guess, if you just found that?
I mean, so, yeah, going directly to those dealers, we're being at 110% of the Black Book CDI, that's comparative to, I mean, from an auction standpoint, and you're gonna get what you get, right? There's a need, the whole market right now has been blowing up for the last 2 years. COVID had that direct effect. Inventory is down 68% right now from dealership lots, it's 28% down from a manufacturer build standpoint. So that has a huge effect on the resale market. We're still selling 110% of a Black Book CDI on top of what's happening generally in the market. So when you're putting vehicles out to bid, you know, we have people that are rated solely on 2 things. It's disposition, so how quickly we can get rid of that vehicle, and then what's the overall dollar amount that we can sell it for. You realize all of the equity that's in 100% to the city. There's no cut, there's no piece of the equity that goes to enterprise. That is your equity. And the flexibility of how you want to handle that is a key component as well. So our departments will roll into the replacement vehicles. A lot of time with, you know, DPW, they have heavy aftermarket, right? Your highway departments, the plow trucks. Makes a lot of sense to minimize what you're doing because it's maybe anywhere from 20 to 30 grand of the aftermarket. Utilize that to drop down your upfront costs. If you have, you know, lighter vehicles, sometimes it makes sense to, you know, sometimes they'll pay for themselves. We've actually had government entities in certain situations like half-ton trucks, cargo vans sell really, really well. They always do. But in this specific market, we actually had specific government entities where they net profited from running vehicles on 12-month leases. We'll appreciate it higher, we'll run it for 12 months. What we can sell the vehicle for from our specific vendors is more than what we bought the vehicle for. That goes back to the city. So it's kind of a turning process. When that changes, if it does, and we know it will, that's kind of, you know, the truth of the market. We look at extending that vehicle for an extra 6 months to 8 months and reevaluate. And we'll do the same thing for both extending and reducing the length of the leases because we're going to provide you that financial data. We run present value analyses where we'll give you the exact cost and estimated cost of, okay, what does it cost to replace the vehicle today? 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, and we'll put it all in present value, and then we ultimately have that decision of what you'd like to do. But we will provide you that data so you know financially what's going to be the best move.
What sort of lag can there be between, you know, when we decide to sell a vehicle, you sell it, we have to get rid of it now to get the new one?
We don't touch it unless you tell us. So we're not going to, the one thing is not, so we're an entirely different team. We will deliver your vehicle, and then we will wait until that term is right. Specifically, you know, government can. You have a lot of equipment. Police departments, there's a lot of transferable equipment. So your radios, there's, you know, whatever you can transfer, you want to, right? That's less aftermarket you have to spend money on. So transfer equipment, you have a new driver, you immaculate it. We wait until you're ready. Then we send out a marketing team, we pick that up, we assess it, and we sell the vehicle. So it's completely based on what your needs are. One key thing too, and I kind of stress the flexibility piece, but again, with the open and empty lease, there is 0 wear and tear penalties. There's no mileage restrictions. Again, it's kind of as if you own it yourself, right? The only thing that, you know, going over on mileage will affect what we're going to sell the vehicle for. If it goes over what we expected, we will reassess what the value will look like. If the vehicle's damaged, handle that exactly how you would today. It's your vehicle to operate. That'll just have an effect on the resale value, but it's going to be the same process as you do it today. So there's no complications from that lease structure as well. The ultimate goal is to maximize your cash flow. You know, if you can, for those expensive vehicles, if you replace on average 3 vehicles for $115,000, we could replace 9 for $76K. This is not inflated in today's numbers. Again, that's my goal, is to, you know, update the analysis to give you a real plan that can be actually implemented. But from a leadership standpoint, you know, you can do a lot more with less and less risk from a replacement standpoint as well.
What about the bid specs for, you know, we're using all Chevy trucks, it's going to be all Chevy that we get so that our cars can get inventory.
I typically will, so again, we're in a different time period, right? So when there's allocation processes right now from Chevy, Ford, Brown is opening up today with their medium-duty trucks, so this has been, you know, it's a really quick process. Fortunately, it's a little bit, but we're going to be best suited to handle that. In a perfect world, which I've done with, years ago, was let's go all one brand. Typically, you'll have your shop guys that are favorable of one manufacturer to another. Usually, it's the big three. Typically, it's Ford and Chevy, from what I've dealt with. If we have the ability to get additional volume incentives, I'm absolutely going to recommend that. But what we're doing right now is you have to be able to be a little bit more flexible, at least within this time frame. We're expecting things to even back out in the next couple of years. But the ability to understand, okay, who's going to have the best incentive? What's the lead times? How many cancellations did we look at last year? What's going to make the most sense for this partner? I'm going to look at all of that for it. So again, that's insight and that's data that no one else has. We're operating 2 million vehicles. We're going to have that insight we need with manufacturer partners. Again, so we're going to let you know when it's time to replace, when it's time to order, what our windows look like. I'll have all the quotes done from aftermarket for you. You can approve it internally. And that process, again, it's trying to remove all of that, administrative burden off your employee and ultimately just make a decision what you can do, move forward, and have your team operate those vehicles.
That's what I'm trying to say is that there was a savings on the parts warehouse that we have. If we're dealing with vehicles, we're not going to have to purchase as many parts and have them on the shelf ready to go. We have savings there, and that's what I was leading off with this client. I would be interested to understand that to us specifically. What kind of cost analysis or cost savings there would be on the analysis we do. Obviously, fuel is fuel. It's going to go up and down. So the numbers that we're looking at, maybe we'll up there.
You're going to see typically 20%. In my analysis, I'm more of that, we'll do 100% savings. It's pretty tiered because of the amount per gallon improvement. You're going to see from everything else, what we're held to. Is generally what we're going to see. Like you said, fuel's fuel. If your vehicle operates this many miles, the only way we can make that cost reduction is by improving miles per gallon. That vehicle's going to drive that much anyway. How do we use that gas? Price of gas is the price of gas. How can we reduce that cost? Having more efficient vehicles. Same thing with maintenance fees. You do not have to stop inventory for a 20-year-old truck because it doesn't need the maintenance. And our goal is really why it works so well is we really want to minimize any type of downtime. Downtime is a key factor too. You guys are going to have a lot of equipment where your shop needs to work on excavators or whatever it might be. I'm not sure if they have 2 different shops that do that. Typically, it's a lot of it's under one roof. Oil change will take time. Tire rotations, we can budget tires and brakes if you're doing it all in-house. Maintenance management is great for tracking, and you continue as you work that. It sounds like you have a good system in place with your maintenance team, so keep that going. If they have less work focused on the fleet, we can use heavier equipment, tech, it's not cheap, so focusing on the equipment maintenance, and those vehicles on the road doing vehicles are going to reduce work costs and downtime.
So along the lines of Councilmember Shoe, integration of this system. So is our city staff going to have to run any type of software platform than what they're currently using right now?
It's super user friendly. We just put $20 million into the website, I would say 2 or 3 years ago. That was some of the feedback we heard, and I think it was 2018, 19. We do surveys for all our partners across the country, and we really encourage feedback. We want to go with user. That's the whole goal. Some of the feedback we're getting is that the website can be confusing, so we worked everything. You will all be able to log in, but you set your own dashboard what you want to see. From what you set will be a lot different than what Gregory set, right? So it'll be based on what you want to be able to see. For your tax, it'll be different. Drivers and the department heads will be different as well. But you'll have your entire fleet list, how it's being appreciated, your whole quality of billing will be there. The savings from maintenance management program will actually show you how the money was saved, giving breakdowns on exactly where the vehicle was sold, what we estimated it, what was the actual return of the equity provided to the city. It's very intricate, it's very user-friendly, so it's not a whole system to report. The process itself and the website itself is It's quite simple. And there's also alerts, so let's say, you just get enough regular F-250 and they hit a recall. So unfortunately, that's what happens. It'll show you exactly what that recall is, the closest dealership that will handle that, and then, how the mileage and everything. From a fuel standpoint, we're assuming you have in-house fueling, which always, obviously, once you take advantage of, you're not going to get better fuel pricing in the municipality. But there's a lot of information that you can have as much or as little as you want based on your operation. It's not meant to cloud the field. If it's too much for some folks, it's fine. Focus on what's important to you. But from a finance standpoint and operational standpoint, you can tailor the dashboard to however you want, and then it stays like that. And you can send push notifications to drivers as well.
As far as like work order management software that we might use, that wouldn't change, right? That would still be appropriate.
You can do whatever you want. I mean, so the structure of this is, again, our goal is that you utilize the website, our maintenance management. What I did for Town of Webster, again, it's a recent, account that just decided to participate in that. It's called Auto Integrate. They can do the POs, ROs, and everything's all in one system. And then, so our website is like one track you need. You can export any type of Excel files that you need. If you have an internal accounting system, that's great. But this is really easy from an ROPO standpoint. You can handle everything in-house, you can do all those work orders. If you like the system you have, if you're worried about, okay, it's going to take a lot to get it implemented, or maybe you want to take a look at it first and slowly implement it, it's absolutely fine.
So, that clients the transition from what they were using to
Some of us are most-
entirely, even vehicles that aren't in the fleet that Enterprise is managing, like
So-
excavators.
Yeah, excavators we will not touch, we do vehicles. So you can maintenance, that, I'm not going to answer specifically, because vehicles is what we do. From excavators, I know that we have like telematics programs where, we have large construction companies, locally, kind of semi-locally, Suco, they utilize that for some of their equipment as well. But there's a lot of flexibility for the ancillary process. From maintenance specifically, that would be something we probably want to maintain on our own system.
Can I just interject here?
Sure.
We just invested in a paperless shop down at Central Garage. All of our, not only all of our vehicles, but any equipment that has a motor, lawnmower, snow blower, weed whacker, it's all in the system, and I'm pretty
That's
sure.
what I'm getting at with this question, is I
Yeah.
want to understand if city staff has to learn a whole new system or not.
They will, and I think it would,
Stay separate.
yeah, and I think it would be incredibly complicated if they had certain vehicles on one system and certain vehicles on the other system. Because what ends up happening is, from the paperless shop, we then end up getting a report on all of the maintenance that is done citywide for each department. And just listening, I think having them to operate two different systems would be incredibly cumbersome on their end.
The way our, just real quick, and Jenny, the way our Sunny Garage works, essentially our garage is built into the departments, but we're,
Sure.
so that's why I think.
Yeah, and if I could just make a suggestion, unless you're going to make major changes to the central garage, the maintenance cost, we have to pay for central garage. If they do one work order, if they do 5,000 work orders. And it gets spread over all the departments that they work on. So the maintenance, that number is already going to be predetermined by the budget, which is the labor, the sublet, and the parts. So that's how we develop that budget. I don't see that changing, except possibly the parts may go down if we're not replacing the parts because they're under warranty or whatever. So what I would like to see here is just the capital investment. Purchase of a vehicle versus leasing a vehicle. I don't care about the fuel, I don't care about the maintenance. I would just like to see the capital part, to see exactly how much savings there would be versus purchasing a vehicle versus leasing a vehicle. Also, I would also like to know the makeup of these 33 vehicles, because this is not our entire fleet, because there's a number of things that they're not able to handle. So that's why I would like to know what these 33 vehicles are. Are they all pickup trucks? Are they police cars? Are they?
But I think before we go there,
Yeah.
he wanted to do a quick presentation to see if this committee wanted to raise it up to full council, so he could do a full council presentation.
Yeah.
And obviously, city staff is participating in all of this, and that's why I want to have these types of questions about for Charlie and his staff, what type of integration there is, whether that's a huge obstacle for them or not. Listening to Ginny talk about maintenance costs or fuel costs, to me, it sounds like government provides the buying savings, and enterprise shows us where the real power of selling comes from.
Selling, and then again, so in your, the way you're structured for your maintenance, identical to what I've handled with all municipalities, but that's, you have to be able to budget, right? You need to know your parts, your labor, that's set. I will create this, I can absolutely do, just look at the capital piece for you.
Well, that would be under their instructions, not mine. I'm just making that suggestion.
Oh, for sure. But I will create the analysis with maintenance and fuel. Again, these are costs that are part of operating the vehicle. So I can't, I'm not going to create an analysis that's, I'll do a separate analysis happily. I have no problem doing that. But it's really important to get a full grasp of the effect of utilizing this structure, reducing the holding period of these vehicles, and how that correlates. So you're 100% right with the only thing that's going to change is the hours, the amount of time that's going to be spent on these vehicles, and then the utilization and purchase of parts. So there's going to be a significant reduction in that maintenance, and that's why you'll see it flatline, because then you're just really doing that basic maintenance on those vehicles. But we'll obviously take into account that, once that's implemented, labor, parts are still the cost of parts, it's just a matter of reducing frequency of it. Fuel is fuel, but if we can improve the miles per gallon, you're going to get savings from the overall costs. And then finally, I don't know exactly what 33 vehicles are in here. I want to make sure that we can have, a strong high-level conversation of, what my goal is to take a look at is, let me look at your whole fleet. I can include or not include whatever you like. We handle anything up to, large medium duty where it's any 26,000 GWR. You do more. We can do higher than that with specialized vehicles as well. But like cranes, excavators, mowers, trailers, that's not stuff we'll do. We recently just started a partnership with EMB, I believe is the acronym, but they do like electric go-karts, so I'm looking at that for some of the universities that don't know how much sense that would make for a city, but there's a lot of different avenues, and Scott, I know we talked about electrification. That's another conversation, I think, as you guys are implementing, discussing implementation. That's kind of a strong handle that we have right now, and recent partnerships allow us to really dial down expenses of implementation, what our current partners have done, what we're doing as a company to electrify, and how we can do that process very smoothly. Not diving in too deep, but their expenses can be high and the infrastructure's not there when you run into issues. And we have a really good handle on that and can help you implement as well.
Go back to something you mentioned earlier about aftermarket.
Sure.
A lot of our vehicles do have some significant aftermarket additions. I mean, in a situation like that, when you're evaluating when do we sell this, when do we make a move and make a recommendation, are you factoring in that time and that expense? Because obviously some of the aftermarket stuff might last longer than 4 or 5 years.
100%.
So do you extend the life in that case, or it obviously depends? But.
So we're going to look at it up front, what we see the best fit for that vehicle, mileage pattern, how much aftermarket is going into it. I'm never going to recommend an F550 with a dump and a plow to be structured on a 36-month lease. You're just not, you have to depreciate it way too high too quick. To get that right set up, it doesn't make sense. And the whole idea is to preserve cash flow. So I would probably look at 60 months, 48 months even, just to look at it. With the aftermarket costs, again, a big way to preserve cash flow is we can capitalize some or all of that aftermarket costs into the lease, where you're looking at putting down 25% of that aftermarket cost, where the rest of it is built into that lease structure, so you're not shelling out all that cash up front. Some of our municipal partners like to, because there's no interest. So it depends where you're at from a cash flow standpoint, and you can change it on a per vehicle standpoint as well. It's entirely up to you. Some departments maybe add a little bit more in their budget, and we can look at, you pay down all the aftermarket, structure that on a lease. Others, it makes a lot more sense. So the flexibility is there, and you're ultimately going to make decisions based off of what your needs are going to be. Any other questions?
You're awfully quiet.
Because I started the program where I work, so I'm good.
Sounds pretty familiar.
Would you be able to provide, if we gave you some examples of recent vehicles that we sold and what we were able to get from them from auctions, their actual, and just comparisons? if I understand correctly, that's probably the biggest key is your ability to sell and get better pricing and for better returns than we would.
Especially from an initial cash flow standpoint, that's going to be a big component, absolutely. Again, having an entire team working for you to manage the vehicles, having infrastructure from, the vehicles that we're operating, having that data and being able to be proactive is another equally important facet for us driving down your overall costs. But I'm happy to provide a long list of, I can use just government vehicles, I can use other private partners too, whatever makes sense for you, and I can always provide that data side by side as well.
Because I was thinking along those lines, because I'd like to see a comparison also. So we were projected, at least 2 years ago, to get rid of 9 vehicles in 2021. Is that something that you could give me the information on? Did we actually get rid of 9 vehicles? Are these the vehicles?
No, that was looking at this program, we get rid of those based on that, it was 10 years or older, we could transition those at that point.
I think what you're alluding to is it's going to be the best way to look at it. I can go back as far as you want. We have data, obviously, from everything we've done. But we can put in maybe, what I did recently with one of our partners is I did a cost comparison of what it looked like pre-pandemic, because that was the town supervisor's immediate concern. Was like, okay, we can sell vehicles. The market's crazier now. How'd you do before the market blew up? So I did a side-by-side, previous, current, and again, you'll see a significant change. I'm very confident in that, but I think that, taking anyone's word for it, it's not, no one's in the business of that, so you have to provide that analysis.
Yeah, and I think what I'm getting at, the city could choose to sell vehicles off after 4 or 5 years instead of 10 or 11. But what further advantage are we getting from enterprise by them selling it through their, avenues?
19,000 unique buyers, give or take, is where that difference is. So like you have to, you're selling yours locally, we're selling there, we have an entire country and vendors of people waiting for those vehicles. So it's just, it's infrastructure. And it's an entire department dedicated to selling those vehicles, rather than taking, your employees out of what they need to do to have to sell those vehicles as well. Let them focus on their work. We have a team that's the best in the world at it, and we pride ourselves on that, and then passing that to you for your overall cost reduction. But yeah, either way, the comparison, I think
We should see savings there. We should also see savings in the maintenance, right? Because we keep our vehicles longer, so it's costing us more to have them.
Right. I mean, I'm just saying theoretically, the city on its own could do the same thing. If you have younger vehicles.
We talked about it. If we were structured, we the council was structured and actually got rid of the vehicles when we were supposed to. You could see some, though. I am curious of the difference in selling, what we're selling our vehicles at and what they're getting. Do you mind doing that?
that was my goal. I'd love to do that. Yeah, that's why I was here, and my goal is to give you guys a really updated look on, let's create something that's actionable. What does it look like today? So all we need is an updated fleet list, inclusive of each department you'd like to include. Year, make, model, VIN, and mileage. That's all I need, and I can run with the rest. If you have maintenance data, I'll make sure to use that exact maintenance data analysis, so it's not basing it off of mileage pattern and type of vehicle. So if you do have the parts and all that, the labor and everything that goes into that, and it's easily accessible. Again, my goal is not to give you guys a ton of homework, but the more data that we have that's your data, I wanted to make sure it's 100% accurate. So anything that you're willing to share, I'll make sure that I can kind of go through the fine-tooth comb and make sure it's where it needs to be.
Yeah, I can provide that pretty easily.
Beautiful.
Recently went through a similar process.
Sure. Okay. Great.
Well, I guess as a committee, why don't we not move this off? Why don't we table this, allow the transaction of data to happen, and then we can revisit this? Because I think we're all curious on what the savings will be. And then, as Jenny said, we have an in-depth software system now that keeps track of every vehicle and all of the maintenance, so that data should be there.
Perfect. And again, if you can provide that, using your numbers is exactly how I would like to do it, rather than type of estimation. Give you guys a real look. It won't take me a ton of time once received. As far as follow-up, how long do we think it would take to have that sent over, just so I have a kind of timeline as well?
I'll get your contact info and
Perfect.
I'll get you all my number, and then you know exactly what you need. I need to list it off, just make sure I have everything, in a week or so. I think I should go.
Perfect. I'll put an email in it tomorrow morning. I got a little bit of a drive back, so I won't get you a time block email tonight. But
He's probably still going to be here.
He's still in the office.
Perfect. Well, I really appreciate the time. What I'll do is I will follow up with just some dates and times. If you don't mind, I can even throw maybe a Zoom call, we can connect, and I'll throw some dates and times so you can assess your schedule. If you'd like me to come in person, we can do more of a data review, and then I'll come out and present in person. I'm more than happy to do that. At least the next step, we can make sure, if it's not received, or if you have questions as I'm inputting it, we can at least follow up. Is there a council meeting you prefer me to come to for the presentation of that data?
I think my kind of thing, you're gonna come back in a couple of weeks or maybe a month if you guys can't connect and get all the information done, because we meet every 2 weeks. Perfect. And so this would be the committee that would say yea or nay, raise that up to the full council. But I think that's a good idea so that you're Syracuse?
I'm Rochester.
Rochester would be worse. So we probably just put you on the Zoom so that you don't have to drive.
Oh, I know.
Yeah, right.
So what I'll do then, just for my end as a follow-up, I'll set a 2-week tentative kind of follow-up, maybe touch call point for all this, just to make sure we have it. If I have the analysis ready, I can come in 2 weeks. If it's not enough time, we'll be in communication. I'll make sure it's good.
I think it's 8 you 3 hours, 6 hours of driving. You just put you up on the Zoom.
Yeah,
You'll still see, still interact with it. I think that would probably be better, but just the exchanging of information that he's looking for.
Can I just clarify the purpose of giving you our maintenance records? What is your goal in knowing what we've spent on maintenance?
So the goal is to make sure that the analysis itself is using your exact data. So this, I can't speak for the gentleman that put it together, but if I'm using this, I'm basing off of your make mileage, what's going on from an aftermarket standpoint, what we have, again, utilizing data of the 2 million vehicles that we have, it's always very close, it's usually within a couple cents per mile, but by utilizing your data, I'm using the exact numbers that you're spending, so there's no discrepancy, that's all. So this number is going to be your number, and then shows an actual tiered process of how we can reduce that with just reducing the actual amount of maintenance. So parts, labor, all of that staying exactly the same.
He already complimented us really in his presentation where he said that our cost for maintenance was lower than most of the municipalities that you work
No,
with.
I understand that. I just wanted to make sure what the goal was.
Yeah, just accuracy, simply just accuracy. Make sure we're going apples to apples and I'm providing data that's accurate.
I'd like to see apples for apples, but.
Great. Perfect. I'll leave you on my card. If you have questions, please don't hesitate to reach out. I guess I'm short time, so if you call, I'll be available.
Almost set.
All set?
Thank you.
Beautiful. Would you like one as well, or you want some?
I think I already have one, but.
Great. All good? Awesome. Well, thank you. Is there any additional questions before I head out?
No, I think we're good.
Awesome. I look forward to getting an analysis put together. Is that a great estimate?
Thank you.
Come down. Of course. Nice safe drive. Safe travel.
Yeah, safe travels.
Appreciate it.
Not on a throughway.
Now, you get the company to buy you an airplane, you have a nice airport.
I don't think I'm going to do an airplane anytime soon.
Is there any other items that need to be addressed on that? I think I just had one, just kind of off the cuff, is how are we doing with revenue sources? I think you guys were going to take a look at a couple of them. Is that progressing, or is that then through the mayor's structure?
What specifically?
Parking. I think we talked about parking as a possibility of a revenue.
Stormwater management fee.
Stormwater management. I just didn't know if these items were being actively discussed.
Yeah, status update. Right?
Yeah, they are being actively discussed. We've had a discussion about stormwater management fee with an attorney.
Cool.
Looked at what Ithaca's done. Essentially, the city would have to be taking a risk, the same risk that Ithaca's taken, and without trying to get into too much detail and screwing it up. But essentially, Ithaca's program, the way they've justified having this fee is based on, I think it's general municipal law, but there's no clear carve out in that law that says a city or a municipality may have a stormwater fee and charge this user fee for people. They're kind of making their own interpretation, and it has not been challenged to date by anyone. But there's not great confidence that you have to really take a risk to do that. Like, I think the risk would be you implement this, you're charging people this fee, someone sues you, you lose, and now what? You owe, I don't know how that would work. So it's something that we need to look into in much more detail, I think, and really kind of try to quantify that risk if we can, to be able to make a recommendation to the council around there.
How long does it take to have their program in place?
It's been 5 or 6 years at least now,
And no commercial residential property is challenged
as far as I know.
Yeah, and they also have a designation in Ithaca that we currently, I don't think, have here, that connects them to a certain section of the law. And that's another thing that we just want to investigate.
What is it? Could you-
I can't,
Oh, okay.
I'm sorry.
Just curious.
It's
MS4?
yes, it was an M something.
Yeah, so usually DEC has a designation for certain municipalities of a certain size, which we are not, where they basically they have to have, there's certain reporting they have to do, certain regulations they have to meet related to stormwater quality and quantity.
Gotcha.
It's called an MS4, municipally separate stormwater or storm sewer.
And
I
they-
don't know that that has anything to do with it certainly doesn't have anything to do with the funding mechanism, but it might make a stronger case as to why the municipality is.
That was how I read it when I was reading.
This isn't an added burden on municipalities to do that, but
Right.
I look at it as, doesn't matter if you're in S4 or not, you have a stormwater system, you have to pay for it,
Right.
and maintain it. So
Okay.
Okay.
more research on that one. Parking, I know, there's some talk about creating a parking task force, to look specifically at parking downtown and elsewhere in the city. I think that's in the works, so I've done quite a bit of research on that.
was gonna say,
And preparing kind of how I want that discussion to go, that makes sense to come down to a decision on things.
Cool.
Any other thoughts for revenue streams?
I don't know my budget, but I feel like they were included. Wasn't there like a sheet? in
There was
here?
an addendum inside the budget for last year. Had some revenue streams in there.
Back to those.
Yeah, there's,
I think it's in the truck.
I have our budget here, but we did not list in the adopted budget any new revenue streams. We had our 2022 action plan that we had presented that of different ideas that we wanted to explore, if that's what you're thinking.
I think that's what I'm thinking
Yeah.
of. Yep. I don't know, I'm sure I have that somewhere in all of my papers on my desk.
Me too. So is that something that we're actively still looking at?
Well, with the parking and with the stormwater, those were two items that were listed. Also, the fire department is still working with Fox Hospital for the ambulance contract. So those are three major areas that we have made progression on, but they are not finalized yet.
Okay.
I think I found at least part of it. We're looking to maximize current revenue sources such as wastewater plants, septic haulers, fees related thereto, which should be increased. I haven't looked at any data on that recently, but that should be increasing now that our new plant upgrade is online. Ambulance fee increase, I can't remember if we increased from 21 to 22.
Well, the ambulance fee increase, we're not increasing the fee itself, but the activity has gone up. We're almost at pre-pandemic levels. And then also looking for other ambulance contracts, which will connect with hopefully the Fox contract if that comes through.
Yeah, that was another separate item, was new
Yeah.
ambulance service agreements. We have our OPT contract increases were possible, we've done that.
We've done almost all of the contracts that we negotiated this year have gone up except for the one with Fox Care. That one stayed the same.
Right, because they told us they couldn't do it anymore for us.
Right. But all the other ones have gone up. Well, I shouldn't say that. I think we left Southside Mall level. So those two.
And your review fee schedule, that's something we do every year.
Right.
Make adjustments as it makes sense. We had armory space rental, it's underutilized, it's not fully rented, all the spaces. I don't know if that's going to change as it is now, but we are, obviously, as you know, doing that armory space needs assessment, building munition study. Maybe we'll find an avenue to improve that so we can get more revenue out of it in the future. Sell vacant city-owned property, that was something that the Housing Commission had started looking at. I think is going to be looking at yet. As far as-
With the probably one of the subcommittees or.
Yeah. seeking funding for the fire truck that we have on our list, which we applied for that grant. We're still waiting to hear. Monitor sales tax. Obviously, we're monitoring sales tax. And Jenny will be developing a projection for next year's budget as normal. And then we had on your gross utility receipts tax. I think that was something that we were gaining an additional.
Yes, there is a vendor that I would like to contract with to actually look at our franchise agreements. And I just haven't had the opportunity to reconnect with them. But they'll be reviewing our contract to see if there's anything that we can expand on. One thing that I have noticed, our franchise fee that we get Spectrum, the revenues have gone down. And I think the reason the revenues have gone down is so many people are now streaming instead of being connected to Spectrum. So they're,
So that agreement is only based on cable TV, not internet?
correct. So that is something that I want to ask the gentleman to see, do we need to modify our contract? What legal basis do we have to be able to?
Absolutely.
So that's one thing that we're looking at.
Kind of along those lines, is there an opportunity for yourself or somebody else, or you and somebody else to talk with the town of Long Island and maybe sell them some more water?
Where we have monthly shared services in the town, they have interest in expanding, creating a east end water districts, further east end of the town line. Actually, right now our water extends to just before Fox here, and it goes from and there's interest in part of the further potential. That would be something that the town would propose. Still
And what about West End?
Well, West End District, we'd like to, water leasehold. Right now, the city owns the water system in the West End of the town. There's a district there. We're typically a town district, so there's a master meter of the city pumping water. And then what we do with it is up to you. We're providing water to individual customers in the West End. So when there's a customer that doesn't pay the city, we can levy their bill on taxes. We can't do that as a city.
You were explaining to us there was several accounts that you went to, in fact, you called the county, or talked to the county, right? You were okay with something a couple of weeks ago, so provided opportunities.
So we're trying to figure out that the town seems to support that concept, but we'll take our city council figuring out how exactly creating a town water district. It's a little different, I think, than most.
So is that something that you're thinking of doing on the east end? So Florida Meadows was a town office, that's where we went to the road.
Yeah.
So from there, I was at, looking at that now, I mean, it's not water, right?
Yeah, but still, how we do it to the plains. We have a master meter that supplies the plains. We bill the town, and then the town bills the plains.
So if we need some consistency, then that would work.
It wouldn't be really easily feasible to turn the West End into that type of district because there's so many interconnections between customers. We didn't look at the city-town boundary map. City turn. So there's a bunch of connections that we don't stick with the same model. We'll try to figure out a mechanism for us to get
So it would be, like Greg just said, for the whole West End to become that type of district would be complicated because we do own all of the infrastructure. But in expanding something new, I think it would be an option to consider.
Any other suggestions? John?